Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to J Raids and hope you guys are having a fantastic day today. And welcome back to another Raid Child Legends video. In today's video, we do have a Sand Devil turn attack coming up, and I want to showcase you guys how you guys can also get a really fast and consistent Sand Devil turn attack team up and going. And now I'm not talking about some Aniri team. I'm not talking about even some like nice max HP Marius new reset team. I'm talking about how you guys can get all the way down to a consistent 3-turn Sand Devil 25 team. And let me show you right here. So we got this team right here. We even got 4 champions. You could even throw in a champion for champion training. But we got Adolin, Mikage, Mad Hatter, as well as Fenax. Let's see what we're talking about. Let's get in here and I'll show you guys what happens and how this team goes. So just sit back, relax, and just watch how this unfolds. We just go boom. Oh no, never mind. Sorry about that. My Adolin isn't booked. So for you guys, just make sure that you do have a booked Adolin. But we'll just wait until there you go. Oh, we missed the decreased speed. Hopefully that's okay. And pow. We land the sleep, ally attack, boom. 3 turns, a Fenax down. Look at that. Look at that. Fenax landing in with a 3 million damage here. Let's break down what exactly goes on here. So we have Adolin in the lead, followed by Lady Mikage into Hatter. And so it's very simple. It's just a very simple 3-turn process here. We have Adolin in the lead. She has 362 speed. Mikage follows up at 349, and Hatter comes in a little bit slower. And what's really going on here is, well, one, we're just having Adolin up front to place the sleep. That's how you deal with the Sand Devil, as long as you're not using some Aniri sort of cheese team. And then Lady Mikage comes in with the first round of ally attack, but more so just with the buffs. And it's really this ability here from the Mad Hatter that really deals the big damage, because what you're doing here is Mad Hatter has a really interesting sort of quote unquote ally attack by bringing in the ally with the highest crit damage on her team. In this case, it's Fenax, to attack using their default skill, which is the double hitter, which hits really hard. Hopefully you guys are not unfamiliar to what Fenax does here, because he is very, very good for exactly kind of teams. And the real kicker here is the damage dealt by the ally joining the attack will increase by 10% for each debuff on the target. In this case, we have the sleep from Adolin, the decrease attack, and the decreased speed. You saw in that case we didn't land the decreased speed, but we still were able to do it. We're getting 10% for each of these debuffs. So that's a 30% extra damage that we're getting for placing these debuffs. And we also have the chance of Brimstone landing, so that could have been an additional 10% damage. On top of that, we also have the Hex and the Weaken, right? So 2 more debuffs, 20% more damage. Weaken itself is another 25% damage. And so that's just a lot of damage. That's really, again, what we're trying to do here. We're really trying to juice up Fenax to deal a bunch of damage. And one of the ways that we can help achieve our goal here is just breaking down into the gear, is again stacking up gear that wants to do the same thing. So the first thing I do want to point out is when it comes to Sand Devil, I do have some area bonuses that do help me to achieve this. And of course, this is done through the live arena. The biggest ones to note is the 20% ignore defense bonus. Now, this is pretty crucial in making sure that you reach that 100% damage ignore defense threshold. Now, I will say that there is some wiggle room in terms of how much damage you can shave off, but I think this is a very easy way to get 20% extra ignore defense without having any really big requirements, right? It's much harder to get like good gear, much better gear than it is to skimp out on the arena bonuses. And there's a little bit of crit damage and attack, but I don't think those are anywhere near maxed. But overall, what we're doing is step 1 is to make sure that we are ignoring 100% defense. That is achieved by a couple things. As you guys saw, I got 20% from the arena bonuses. I have 35% coming in from a 6-piece merciless set. That's 55% ignore defense. I also have the 6-star crushing Rend blessing on Fenax, and I think this is fairly mandatory out of anything here. I think this is the biggest point that will probably make or break whether or not you can achieve a 3-turn run like this. And that is not only helping you to ignore 30% of the target's defense, but it also is for every hit. As you saw, my team, Fenax is going to hit 4 times, the first 2 from the Mikage L attack, and then the second 2 from the Mad Hatter, which is really where we need the damage. If you have anything less than that, in terms of a blessing, if you have a 5-star below, it's really just not going to work because you don't have that additional 30% ally ignore defense when you need it. So what we're doing here is we have a, actually, do we get 35%? Yeah, so we actually get 35% because the Sand Devil is level 350. We actually get a 35% ignore defense from the Crushing Rend. And I believe this doesn't cap. So we have 35% coming from Crushing Rend. We have 35% coming from the Piece Merciless, and we have 20% coming from the arena bonuses, which adds up to 90%. And then we have 1 hit from Lady Mikage. I have a 6-star cruelty blessing on her. That's a plus 4%. And finally, we have a nice 2% on our gemstone here. So essentially we have 96%. And of course we do have the Helm Smasher blessing. This Helm Smasher is fairly negligible. It's probably better to go for Flawless Execution or crit damage, but I'm too lazy to spend 150 gems for it. So right now we have roughly around 96% ignore defense, and that's totally fine. The last 4%, if you can get it, if you can't, it's not the biggest deal. There is some level of wiggle room in terms of how much damage you need to deal. Now, just again, looking at the stats, my Fenaxis is fairly end game. Of course, one thing that is nice about this build is you don't need any speed at all, so you can sacrifice a lot more speed in order to get better attack stats, crit damage stats, whatever it might be. But I have a fairly decent setup here, right? I have a 6-piece Merciless set and I have a 2-piece Zeal giving me 8.3k attack as well as almost 400% crit damage. Once we have hit the close to 100% ignore defense, the only thing left to do is have multipliers that will boost our damage. So for example, the Zeal set here has a plus 3% damage for every 25% health this champion has. If the champion's at 100% HP, which in this case it is, I have an additional 12% damage there, right? So on top of my ignore defense, I have 12% damage coming from the Zeal set. I have my Relic, which I won't go into too much detail, but it's essentially about 30% more damage. One coming 10%, about 10% coming from Essence Quencher. I have 10% from the Triangle Gem, and then I have 10% from the Circle Gem. The Relic itself is another 30% of additional damage. And then, of course, we have the Mad Hatter as well to boost up more damage, right? So it's a very well-oiled machine that can help you to get to 3 turns. Now, I do want to note one thing here about how this works is that once you land the sleep, okay, never mind. Again, make sure your Adolin is booked, guys. I don't have Adolin booked because I don't actually use her in my Sand Devil team, but for you guys, I want to showcase it with Adolin because I think she is a fairly she's a free option, right? So the Sand Devil has 8 sleep stacks, or whatever you want to call it, right? And you need to make sure that whatever happens, you don't wake up the Sand Devil. Otherwise, she's going to gain a lot of turn meter and cut in, and you're going to die. And so when we have this ally attack here, we have Mikage attacking once, we have Adolin attacking once, Mad Hatter attacking twice, and Fenax attacking twice, right? So we have 6 attacks in total. Now, what you want to what you want to be careful about is if you have War Master on any of your champions, War Master will also count as a stack towards a sleep. So even though we have 6 hits here, we actually took down 7 stacks because we have War Master on Mikage. And in this case, I also have a relic on Mikage that is the, what's it called? The Purge Shadow one. So if you are running this team, you have to make sure that one, you either don't have War Master on your champions, otherwise the Sand Devil will wake up and this won't work. And if you do have a Purge Shadow Blessing, you got to make sure you have your configuration set in a different way, right? But in this case, because I had Perch Shadow Blessing and it randomly activated on like a 15% chance, this now has to be a 6 turn. So if you are wanting to replicate this exact team, you have to make sure that one, you don't have Perch Shadow on Mikage. I have it on her because it's fantastic for Chimera, and it doesn't break my other team that I will showcase in a bit. And you want to make sure you don't have War Master, right? Oh, that was embarrassing. We didn't even kill. What happened there? What happened there? Um, I think it's just the inconsistency with. Oh, so okay, here I think we're totally fine now because I think we just didn't place enough debuffs from the. Yeah, there we go. We just didn't place all of our debuffs from Adolin, and this will be totally fine. If you guys have Adolin booked, you guys won't see any issues with it. But now I will show you my better team. This is if you have exactly No-siphi, you can actually achieve a 2-turn team coming down from this 3-turn. One of the big issues with this team is that you have to go with the sleep first. What is really cool with No-siphi is that No-siphi brings a sleep on her A1. So what I can do is I can just skip having to go into sleep first. I have the ally attack, my No-siphi goes in, places a sleep, and then I have the same thing, Mikage into Hatter, and it's a simple 2-turn process. And this is 100% consistent because there's less leap tokens or sleep sleep tokens spent. I forgot what I'm calling them, but there's less sleep tokens spent on here because during the ally attack, the Hatter attacks twice before the No-siphi. The sleep happens here. Mithrala goes in with 2 hits. Fenax goes in with 2 hits. So there's only 4 sleep tokens taken in this whole process, and then Hatter goes in with his a hit, and Fenax goes in for the kill. Now, what is a little bit tricky about this is, yes, there is some flexibility in terms of champions use. Of course, if you have No-siphi, she is going to be the best option that can lead you to a 2-turn Sand Devil team. But of course, if you don't have exactly No-siphi, maybe you have someone like Adolin who applies a sleep, right? In this case, I don't have this ability booked. If you do want to use Adolin, you are going to make sure that you do have at least 2 books in her A3 ability to make sure you have a 100% chance of placing the sleep as well as the debuffs. Now, okay, if you don't have either, what kind of options do you have? And there are some, but I will want to point some things out. Of course, there are plenty of sleep champions, but again, there's 2 things you have to be a little bit cognizant of. The first is affinity. For Sand Devil 25, the Sand Devil is red affinity. And if you have any blue affinities champions that play sleep, let's say you have Noct the Paralyzer, let's say you have Prince Kaimar, for example, these champions have the chance to weak hit their sleep effect, and you won't have a consistent run. So I would highly advise you against using any magic affinity champions if you are trying to do Sand Devil 25 with this strategy, because you will ruin your consistency if you don't hit. Now, one of the cool things that was recently buffed is Harvest Jack, for example, right? He now has an irresistible sleep effect without needing any books, right? I believe, or for some reason I feel like that was a thing. But let me just read. Has a 75% chance of replacing an irresistible sleep debuff if the true fear is not placed. I guess you still do need books, but regardless, let's say you wanted to use Harvest Jack instead, right? Let's say you have Harvest Jack, he places sleep. Now, what is the issue with Harvest Jack in this exact team? It is the fact that his A1 hit has a triple hitter. And if you guys remember, there's only 8 sleep tokens to go through after the first hit. And if you are using Mikage, that does have an ally attack. Well, now you're going 1 hit from Mikage, 3 hits from Harvest Jack, 2 hits from Mad Hatter, and 2 hits from Fenax. So now you're using 9 sleep tokens. The Sand Devil wake up and obliterate your team. So unfortunately, there's 2 requirements for your sleeper. One, you have to make sure that it is the right affinity, so not magic affinity, in order to make sure you don't have the chance to weak hit. And your A1 has to be a single hitter. Anything with more than a single hit There's well, actually, it can be a double hit. It can be a double hit. It just cannot be anything more than a triple hit, right? Because you only have room for 2 hits in order to not wake up the Sand Devil. Now, what other options are there? I'm not sure this isn't going to be fully exhaustive, but someone like a Cornelia actually works here, right? She places a sleep debuff here, and she only has a single target hit. But the big difference between someone like Cornelia compared to whatchamacallit, Adolin, is the amount of debuffs that she places. Here, she only places 1 sleep debuff, right? Whereas Adolin places 2 additional debuffs. These debuffs not only boost the amount of damage that Mad Hatter will do with his ability, but very critically, the Sand Devil also has damage reduction based on how few debuffs are placed, or rather the opposite, right? The more debuffs you place on the Sand Devil, the less damage reduction occurs. And so the issue with someone like Cornelia is now you have less debuffs. You have to make up a lot more damage modifiers or damage multipliers. So the worse options you have in terms of placing fewer debuffs, the more reliant you are going to become on needing to have harder hitting Mad Hatter gear and so on and so forth. You guys saw in that earlier example where Adolin only placed 2 debuffs. I wasn't actually able to get enough damage to kill the Sand Devil. So who else do we have here? We have April Neil, that doesn't work. We have Tatsu, 100% chance to place sleep and a decreased res. So Tatsu, actually, what does his A1 do? Attacks 2 times. So Tatsu could work. He has a sleep and places an additional debuff. And then he has a single A1 that is only a double hitter, right? So someone like Tatsu can work as well, right? Let's Tyrell is bad affinity. What does Cage Breaker do? Attacks 4 times at random, so you can't do that, unfortunately. What does Seer do? Seer? I don't know. That sounds a little sketchy. Ustrid, you honestly maybe could. You have like the increase attack, increase speed off of Ustrid, so you have the increase attack coming. Then you have A1 that sleeps. But the issue here is that her sleep is only 75% chance of landing unless you already have decreased speed or weakened placed, which maybe you could. No, but you would need to place a sleep and then place decreased speed or weaken. So no, you wouldn't be you wouldn't be consistent. Although technically you could enable a 2-turn with Ustrid because she places sleep on her A1, but the difficulty is it's only going to be a 75% chance. So technically you could YOLO it if you did want to have the flex to you wanted to flex a 2-turn and Devil team, you could swap in Ustrid for the No-siphi, but you just won't be consistent, right? So those are 2 things that you do want to worry about when you are thinking about your Sand Devil sleeper. Now, some other things that I do have, again, along the veins of increasing our damage modifier, we have a 9-piece protection set on our Lady Mikage, and this gives 5% more damage for every buff that she places. So she places 2 buffs, another 10% damage. We have a feral set on Mad Hatter, which increases 5% more damage for each debuff place. Mad Hatter places 2 debuffs, so that's an additional 10% damage. So again, Adolin could be in a 9-piece feral set that would give an additional 15% damage. But for me, I just don't have the fast enough gear on her. So this is just kind of thrown on to make sure that she is faster than Lady Mikage. But overall, let's see what we have here. We have 40% extra damage from the relic. We have 10% damage from protection on Mikage. We have 15% damage from Mithrala. If I was in my 2-turn team, I have Mithrala with a 9-piece feral set. And she places 3 debuffs with, if you're counting the Brimstone, on her A1. And we have 10% from the feral as well from Mad Hatter. So again, the whole thing here is we just want to make sure that we stack a lot of damage. We have a sleeper, and we make sure we don't wake the Sand Devil up. Whether or not you can achieve a 2-turn is totally up to No-siphi. But if you don't have No-siphi, of course, you can still achieve a 3-turn Sand Devil, provided that you do have a sleeper that provides a sleep on a 100% basis. It'd be good to place additional debuffs as well, and only have an A1 that does 1 or 2 hits. Otherwise, you're going to wake the Sand Devil up. Again, you want to make sure that you don't have the War Master blessing on any of your champions. Otherwise, that might also contribute to waking up the Sand Devil. You don't want to have something like a Perch Shadow on your Lady Mikage. Otherwise, again, you have a chance to wake up the Sand Devil. But when it all comes together, you get this fantastic looking 3-turn team that is honestly, I think, fairly achievable for you guys. Let's see. I might have just again. So if I had, I think that's a good little sort of, that's the limit, right? We only place 2 debuffs with our Adolin. If you guys have her booked, she's going to place 3, and of course I had the chance to place Brimstone, right? So you need at least that many number of buffs, or debuffs rather. You needed 1 more debuff. So you had the sleep, the decrease attack, and you had the weaken plus hex. So that was only 4 debuffs. And you want to make sure your team can place at least 5, and that way you are reducing the damage mitigation from the Sand Devil. So those are the little step-by-step process. This is my team again, my nice 2-turn team. As you guys can see, I am placing the sleep debuff here, and then the brimstone and 2 poison. So I'm placing 4 debuffs here, and then I'm placing 2 more here. And that helps me to cut through all of the damage mitigation from the Sand Devil. And Fenax just killed the Sand Devil without needing a second hit. And so you guys can see there's some level of wiggle room between a 2-turn team, that is my team here, and the 3-turn team. But you do need to make sure you do have the right number of debuffs or the right number of damage multipliers and stats. If I had Adolin in a 9-piece feral set and I only landed 2 debuffs somehow, I'd probably be okay. But again, the whole thing is make sure you have the ability to ignore all of the Sand Devil's defense, or close to all of it. Make sure you have enough debuffs to reduce the mitigation effect of the Sand Devil, and make sure you don't wake up the Sand Devil after you put a... Hopefully this gives you a little bit of inspiration into thinking about how you guys can also figure out how to make a 3-turn or even a 2-turn Sand Devil team if you guys do have the champion that is no-siphi. So I appreciate you guys for tuning in today. Hopefully you guys found this helpful, and best of luck to anyone trying to build this team before the Sand Devil turn meter or the turn attack event tomorrow. Hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day, and thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys like this content, feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out, and I appreciate you guys. Have a good one.